Good morning, Namaskar. Can we bring up my presentation? As we do that, I'd like to thank the Foundation for inviting IRENA to share some perspectives on global renewable energy investments and what the trends are. IRENA, those of you who do not know, we bring together about 184 countries. It's an intergovernmental organization representing roughly about 97 to 98% of the global energy consumption. Brings together India, Panama, several other countries. And what we try to do is to support countries, give global pathways on energy transition as to what are the technologies to prioritize, what are the barriers, what are the mechanisms in terms of financial instruments, policy and regulation that countries can deploy at the national level, sometimes at the region level, to accelerate this energy transition. I don't see my presentation, but I will continue nevertheless. So what we are seeing is that there's been a significant... Okay, so just to give you some numbers, the energy transition investment has been increasing steadily. And I think this is something which has not really been affected by the pandemic. What we saw during the pandemic was also that the renewable energy systems were much more resilient. They were not affected by supply chain disruptions in terms of coal and gas, etc. And what we're also seeing with the geopolitics, which is happening in Europe, that some of those fossil fuel supplies are getting affected, etc. So that even in these pandemic and conflict situations, renewable energy and investments have continued to increase significantly. And what you see is that two technologies have been emerging very clearly, solar followed by wind. And increasingly, it's generally been onshore wind, but increasingly offshore wind as well. What we have also seen, particularly in the power sector, that in the past 5 to 6 years or so, renewables have become the go-to source for power sector investments. And that has continued to accelerate to the extent that about 80 to 83% of power sector investments are coming from renewable energy. The rest probably gas and a very limited number of new coal investments. And the reason that it's happening is that there's been significant reductions, continued reductions in terms of levelized cost of energy, which you can get from solar and wind, both onshore and offshore wind. Increasingly, countries are looking at offshore because of the availability of land and other constraints. And these figures are from last year. We do have IRENA publications upcoming in the next couple of months on costs, power sector costs, and you will see that these are continuing to go down, and there are some surprises there as well. So the trend is, in terms of investments, it's going up. In terms of cost reductions, it's coming down. This is the right moment to take off. But there are challenges, though, or rather new areas. As you will see in this graph, is that there's an increased investments in electrification, particularly electrification of transport. And what you'll see is that the whole clean energy sector, including transport, electrification, storage, etc., has now become $1 trillion investment scale. And the fastest growing segment there is the green that you see there, which is the electrification of transport. And that investment often comes from fleet operators, individuals who invest in electric mobility, etc. And that's really growing very fast. And again, there is a need to catch up in terms of investments in the infrastructure, both at the low voltage, the charging side, and also energy planning and investments in renewable energy to support this. What is quite interesting is that there's been a lot of interest and discussion around green hydrogen over the last several years, to the extent that a lot of countries, we've been telling them just to go a bit slow, because everyone, including countries which are net energy importers, want to then start exporting green hydrogens. And we see a fairly limited role for green hydrogen in the industries, heavy industries, in navigation and aviation, etc. And what you see here is also that the green hydrogen, which should have been the red part of the bar, is not that significant. So that a lot of the discussions and the talk is not really translating in investments in electrolyzers or storage and all of that. It might happen, but again, we're not seeing those numbers on the ground. What is also quite important is the investments that need to happen in the electrical networks, the grids. They are accelerating, and they're about 270 odd, and India is among the top 10 as well. The biggest investments in the grid systems is still continuing to happen in China, both on the transmission and distribution. And this is something which is becoming a barrier in a number of countries where, because of the variable nature of solar and wind, and these investments, plus the investments in energy storage, needs to be ramped up significantly. According to IRENA estimates, we are only about 1/3 of the way to be within the 1.5 degree temperature goals of the Paris Agreement. So we need to triple the level of renewable investments. And grid and the storage or the mechanism, grid forming technologies to manage the variability is a major area which needs increased investments. What we also find there is that particularly with storage, etc., there are not enough business models for private sector investment. There is, of course, a business model for frequency support, but that's a very small market. You need to have a better market proposition around the power price arbitrage, and for that, the conditions, both the regulatory investment conditions, need to be made as well. We did some work as part of the Indian G20 to look at some of the G20 countries like India, Indonesia, Argentina, Brazil, etc., to see how governments can mobilize long-term low-cost capital. And here the Indian Green Bond Scheme, which has been quite popular, as well as the Islamic finance in Indonesia, the efforts by the Brazilian bank Benedes, and also Argentina to put in place a guarantee mechanism denominated in dollars, etc., are interesting. But we need to really go beyond the conventional thinking when clean energy becomes a trillion-dollar opportunity, to go beyond the conventional source of finance or the traditional ones into larger scale country-led investments. What is also important is the role of the private capital. If you look at Europe, 70 to 80% of investments do come from the private sector, private companies, private individuals, etc., facilitated by the market. And that is a large market, a common market in Europe. What we really need is to use public capital smartly from the governments, from development banks, both national as well as international, bilaterals, etc., to leverage that private capital and provide some sort of a smart investments to leverage more private capital. And we see blended finance as an important element in this. What we also think that philanthropies like what Deepali alluded to, what Rockefeller is doing, IKEA, Bezos, and now increasingly Bloomberg, are bringing in capital at scale, billions of dollars as grants, as money which need not reflow back to the institutions to leverage some of these private sector investments, particularly in geographies beyond India, G20s, etc., in sub-Saharan Africa, where the opportunities are there. For example, a lot of the countries in the global south, the electricity prices are close to $1. So it provides a significant opportunity for private capital come, but the risks are very high, the country risk, the technology risk, etc. So we need to create mechanisms such as the Renewable in Argentina at a global scale to facilitate those private sector investments. So public, both national as well as the international public finance, plus philanthropies could play an important role here. So the opportunity for renewables is very bright. Financing, grid forming technologies, etc., will remain a constraint. There needs to be much more investments into the grid forming technologies, plus on things like thermal storage, etc. And today, renewable energy is quite attractive, and we need to look beyond the power sector to electrification. Electrification not just of transport, but also buildings and industry, and also look at fuels, including green fuels like green hydrogen, for niche sectors may not be relevant. And again, the key really is to how we use public capital to leverage private capital. And here, India is showing a lot of innovation. There's investments by the private sector at scale. A lot of those innovative things that Sidbey Chair Raman spoke today morning are quite pioneering, and I'm sure that what's happening in India can be replicated elsewhere. So thanks again for giving IRENA this opportunity, and wish the conference and the Zilla deliberations a significant success. Thank you.